I was already a fan of him. And when I first met Bobby and Barbie, I was just amazed by them. I was firstly amazed by their courage, because I realized that Bobby had just become a member of parliament, and he'd been this incredibly successful musician who had grown up in a ghetto in Kampala, and he had pulled himself out of that. He had become a huge musical star. Everything was going incredibly well for him. He had this most beautiful wife. He had 4 beautiful children. And then he decided to risk everything and become a member of parliament for an area in Kampala. And in a way, it just struck me as just such a crazy thing to do, because everything was so perfect, and I knew that anyone who stands against President Museveni, who'd been in power at that point for 35 years, was risking everything, because this is not a country which has elections as we know elections. This is a military dictatorship, and Museveni doesn't tolerate people who stand against him. And I knew he particularly wouldn't tolerate someone like BOBI Wine, who through his music was able to communicate with the people. Uganda has an incredibly young population. The average age is, I think it's 16 now, and 80% of people are under 35. So Bobby was able to connect with them. And when I met Bobby and I heard the story, I mean, it sounded like a synopsis for a feature film, and I thought this is such a compelling story. And because I had this big connection with Uganda, I felt that we really need to make a film, and Bobby said yes. And then I met up with Moses, who was my co-producer, who is a Ugandan and a fantastically brave and courageous man. I'm afraid he's not with us today. He's a co-director. He's actually just gone to Telluride, so we'll be all meeting up with him. But he was the co-director on the film, and together we were able to follow Bobby for 5 years, and that's how we met.
Mm-hmm. And John, how il fatto di seguire Bobby in 5 anni che hanno cambiato la sua vita e magari, chissà, in futuro anche il destino di un intero paese, è stata un'operazione pericolosa, perché sembra che tutto quello, da quello che si vede nel documentario, tutto quello che ruota intorno a Bobby a un certo punto diventa materia che scotta, diventa pericoloso.
I mean, in many respects, that's a better question to ask Chris and or Bobby. I was safely in London as the producer, watching footage and sitting in an edit and helping Chris and the editor edit the film. But you heard the question.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's extremely dangerous, and it became more and more dangerous. Moses was at the forefront when it became particularly dangerous towards the end during the election, and he actually was shot at, and he was shot in the face, and he actually spent some days in prison. Anyone in Uganda associated with who's seen to be filming Bobby or supporting Bobby is really, really in trouble. So yeah, it was incredibly dangerous. I mean, Bobby will tell you what has happened to people around him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, at such a time, I don't know what exactly to talk about and what not to talk about, because it's so much. As a matter of fact, I was almost complaining to my producer that the impunity is not shown to its maximum, and he was explaining to me that we cannot just show violence, violence, violence. It's terrible what's up there, what's happening. I'm just glad that this film is giving opportunity for the first time to show to the Western world what exactly is happening in Uganda. For 36 years now, General Museveni has been very smart. He has succeeded in painting a rosy picture to the world out there and to keep the oppression of the people of Uganda covered up. I hope we can show it. Of course, while I speak here, many of my friends are missing, many others are in prison, and many are underground, killed by the regime. So apart from the questions that you will ask me and I'll be answering one by one, I don't know where to start and where to end.
Ecco, allora una delle domande è l'idea di essere protagonista, diciamo, di una storia che poi è una storia, la storia di un uomo, è la storia di un musicista, è la storia di un aspirante presidente. Ecco, tutto questo la spaventava o l'ha percepita subito come un'opportunità, come dire, che non si poteva trascurare?
For me, it was neither a choice nor an opportunity. I did not get into this because I was brave. No, I keep getting scared every now and then. There was no option, you know. While I know that it's dangerous to be doing this, there's one thing that is more dangerous, doing nothing at all. The danger now is focused on me and the people that dare to support the ideals that I represent. But there's a bigger danger for people out there that are voiceless and, you know, need somebody to speak out for them. So I've been keeping away from politics for a long time, and I was comfortable. Back home, it's comfortable not to think. The safest thing is to ignore the injustices that are ongoing. Unfortunately, I come from the ghetto, and I knew that if I don't rise to the occasion to represent these people, then nobody would, especially in this time where all the intellectuals, all the professionals are feeling safer, not antagonizing the regime, carrying on their comfortable lives, and, you know, hoping that maybe a miracle will happen. I didn't believe in miracles like I don't believe in them now, and I believe that we had to do something about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Quello che accade in Africa e nella maggior parte dei paesi dell'Africa non arriva nelle news né in Europa né negli Stati Uniti probabilmente. Allora mi chiedo, e questo magari John può risponderci, in questo caso, proprio in questo caso il cinema può essere un veicolo importante e insostituibile perché, come dire, quantomeno si sia informati di quello che accade, non dico avere una coscienza, ma almeno che anche in Europa e in America si conosca quello che sta accadendo in questi paesi.
Absolutely, yes, and that's you know the great power of cinema, and in the case of this film, you know, I'm delighted to say that as soon as we started showing the film, you know, amazing festivals, not least Venice, you know, the best of them all, selected the film, and off the back of Venice, we're heading straight to Telluride, which is one of the preeminent festivals in America, and we have invitations to play in festivals, you know, all over Europe and all over the world, you know, that we're considering at the moment. So you know, it's an incredibly effective way of bringing this story to as many people as possible, not least, you know, it's a 2-hour-long film. People can sit down and they can get the whole of Bobby's story, you know, in one sitting and get to understand, because he's so articulate and so brilliant at how he tells his story, him and Barbie. You know, it's an opportunity for people to really profoundly understand the situation in Uganda in a way that would take, normally if you didn't have a film like this, it would take a tremendous amount of time and effort and writing, and people would have to go to great effort to learn about this story. So, you know, it's incredibly gratifying, as I said, first of all, to be here, but then to have all these other places wanting to show the film, reacting positively to the film, and enabling us to get the story to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Sure. La musica è un veicolo importante per quello che Bobby vuole comunicare ed è naturalmente anche il cuore del film. Ecco, come avete lavorato per integrare la musica nel racconto e poi mi chiedo se, appunto, se Bobby non fosse stato un musicista, se avesse avuto la stessa opportunità di farsi conoscere e ascoltare oppure no.
I mean, I'll start with that. Yeah, I think, I mean, When we started making the film, obviously we had to make a lot of decisions. We shot thousands and thousands of hours of footage over the 5 years. The music, most of the music in the film is actually telling the story. So it's in the film are actually critical to the story, and they tell it so well. Bobby uses his music and his lyrics to communicate with people. Back home, he's not allowed to perform, he's not allowed to play on radio stations, but when you walk through the streets, you hear BOBI Wine's music blaring everywhere. So you can't suppress music, because if people love it and it touches them, they're going to find a way to listen to it. And we knew that what made the film so incredibly special actually was the music. You know, we didn't want to just make this another story about, you know, this despot and elections that were unwinnable because it was a military dictatorship. We wanted to show the whole thing through Bobby and Barbie's eyes and those close to them. I mean, Bobby said to us at the end, you've just shown so little violence. You know, we interviewed lots of people who'd been tortured. I mean, just unspeakable, almost medieval torture. And we had long discussions with John and with Paul, the editor, and Moses. And we were like, you know, how much of this do we show? And at the end of the day, we thought it was going to be far more touching and far more real and far more effective to show the pain through Bobby and Barbie and what their children had to go through and what all the people close to Bobby had to go through. And I think that's what makes the film successful, is you get to know these wonderful, incredible, brave, courageous people, and you live with them. You live the 5 years and you see what had happened to them.
And also, if I can just add, the lyrics of the songs are in the movie, and so you get to see Bobby's writing, really, and because the lyrics are so powerful and deliver the message so clearly, and it's rare in a movie, a documentary or any movie, for you to actually have the lyrics on screen. But Chris wanted to, and Moses wanted to, integrate that in a very clear way so that audiences are not mistaken in any way about what it is Bobby's saying, and I think it works really effectively.
Bobby, mi chiedevo se i suoi figli hanno visto il film e che cosa ne pensano.
Well, my children have not watched the film, but they know that the film will be out someday because they saw the cameras around us and they got used to them. I don't know what my children think, but what I have taught them to understand is that everything is real. And in the beginning, my wife tried to keep this violence, this oppression away from the children, until my wife and I agreed that this is part of us. And the sooner the children understand the reality that we're dealing with, the better. Because in the past, my children thought it's only criminals that are taken to prison. But for the many times that their father's been taken to prison, I had to be honest with them, for them to understand that, you know, this is the reality that we are dealing with. So yeah, my children know about it. My children had to grow up much earlier than their age, because that's the reality they are facing. Yeah.
E cosa sta accadendo in questi mesi nella sua vita?
Well, what's happening in the recent months in my life and in the lives of many people is not very different from what has been happening. I continue to be, you know, harassed by the government. I'm literally an illegal citizen in Uganda. Not legally, but practically. I cannot attend a public gathering without being, you know, followed. I cannot be allowed on radio, TV stations. My music is banned. I cannot perform. But that is personal. That wouldn't be so much of a pain. But the abductions of the people that are around me and those that support me continues. Just this morning, another friend was abducted and, is still missing. The, extrajudicial killings continue, although now there's a big effort to gag the media. The local media does not talk about it. It is social media that talks about it, which social media is also, gagged. Facebook is banned in Uganda by the president. And, there's every effort to silence not just me, but all voices of dissent in Uganda. The oppression continues, the violence continues, the state-sanctioned abductions continue. The situation continues, although there's much less attention of international media to Uganda since the end of the election. But the government continues to do what it has been doing in the past. Yeah.
Christopher, è stato citato più volte il lavoro di montaggio, avete girato moltissimo materiale, ma poi si trattava di trovare una sintesi che restituisse il dolore di questa battaglia, insomma, che va avanti. Che criteri avete usato per selezionare i personaggi magari che ruotano intorno a Bobby o alle situazioni da raccontare?
Yeah, we had, as I said, we had thousands and thousands of hours of footage, so we had to be extremely careful. I think we sort of made a decision just to make it as personal as possible about Barbie and Bobby, and Bobby's singing partner Nubian, and Bobby's right-hand man, who's a guy called David Lewis. So we sort of stuck with them. Obviously, there's lots of other characters in the film, but we really focused on what they were going through. And what was just incredible, and when we started, I just couldn't believe the access Bobby and Barbie gave us, because it was so intrusive. And we were in their houses. There was never, unless they were doing a particularly sensitive political meeting, there was never a time when they said, stop filming. And sometimes I would just be like, I cannot believe they're allowing us to film this moment of personal anguish. You know, you'd think Bobby or Barbie would say, guys, please stop. This is so personal. You know, Barbie's crying, or, I mean, stop, you know. And they didn't do that. And it was extraordinary. Also, it kind of made me feel that they had nothing to hide. So it wasn't like they were trying to edit the film, or they were trying to edit what we saw or what we might use. There was just total faith. And I think the faith came out of the fact they were being honest. There was nothing to hide. There was no other motive. This was what they were doing, and it was very, very straightforward. So we ended up with just a massive amount of material, which obviously makes it very difficult, because you have a lot to go through and you have a lot to think about. But I think, you know, with John's help, and then we had this incredible editor, Paul Carlin, we got something where we were all pretty comfortable with, and it's personal, which always means more.
E questo è un racconto che sarebbe potuto proseguire ancora, perché la storia appunto non ha raggiunto la parola fine. Quando avete deciso che, come dire, era il momento di fermarsi?
Well, we sort of thought that the elections would be the full stop. We knew that it was absolutely impossible that Bobby would win the election, because you don't win elections in Uganda. But we always thought, once the election's over, we'll stop. But then we sort of kept going a bit longer than we thought. And we were editing for 2 years, so we were editing way before the elections. We were already editing, so we didn't know how the film was going to end. We didn't know what was going to happen. The constant fear was whether Bobby would be killed. You know, Barbie would quite often phone me up, and she'd be in tears, and she'd say, you know, there's terrible things happening, that thing's happening. But we just didn't know, and it was, you know, awful for them, and also for us. It was incredibly stressful, because you just never knew how this story was going to end, and whether Bobby would would make it, and a lot of his friends and people around him sadly didn't make it. But Bobby is still here. So we did the elections, and then there was various things we had to cover, because Bobby's main team and his best friends, not just political friends but musical friends, his producer Dan Magic and his singing partner Nubia, were locked up in military dictatorship for 6 months. No, they were charged with treason, I think it was. I mean,
Yes, treason.
and they were locked up for 6 months. So Bobby lost for the election. How many months before the election did they?
Oh, they locked them a week to the election.
A week before the election, he lost all his support. They were all taken away from him. So he was totally alone. And then for another 5 months after the election, all his friends were in prison. So and you don't know what's happening to them. I mean, just unbelievably stressful. So they were alone. And as anyone who's seen the film ends up with Bobby and Barbie, after all of this incredible effort, thousands of people, all this love, they're just in their house alone. That's it. They've just been left alone, and they're surrounded by the military, and it's just their friends are all in prison, and you can imagine how terrible it was for them and how extraordinary.
And I must just quickly add, I rather naively, I didn't know that there was no chance that Bobby could win the election. I don't have the understanding of Uganda that Chris has, etc. So actually, even up until the election, I kept calling Chris saying, has he got a chance? How's it going to go? How's it going? And it was heartbreaking, really. It was heartbreaking. The truth is that he didn't have a chance because when you see the film, you'll see it's so clear that the majority of people desperately want him to be the president, and he went about his campaign in such an authentic and honourable way that the idea that actually there was never a chance for him to win hadn't occurred to me, and it was shocking to discover that that's the actual truth.
Ci sono stati dei momenti in cui avete temuto di non poter andare avanti, cioè, qual è stato veramente il momento più difficile di tutte queste riprese?
I think there was a time in 2018 when Bobby, I mean, it's a big part of the film where Bobby went campaigning, and he was sitting in the car, and he moved seats, and his driver moved into the seat, and his driver was wearing the same clothes as he was wearing, and someone came up and killed him and shot him, and it was very clear that they intended to kill Bobby. Bobby was then trapped in a hotel. He was hiding in a room. Barbie was getting messages from him, and Barbie was telling me what was going on, and we really thought he was going to die. I mean, we thought, so that was just awful, because we thought that this is the end, and it's just a young family and a wife, and it's just too terrible for words. But somehow he survived, and he survived because there was the international community and the international, well, not so much the political community, but journalists all over the world came to his rescue, and like the New York Times and the BBC and the Guardian and all these wonderful platforms came to his rescue. I think one thing I'd like to say is, I think one of the disappointing things I felt, and I know Bobby's more an optimistic and a more generous person than me, but one of the things we felt at the end, when all of this, Bobby had stood up for democratic values that in the West and in the developed North we profess to hold so dear. We say, this is our values, we believe in democracy, we believe in it. But when someone stands up and has exactly those values, it was disappointing the way the international political community, they all came out and said, oh, the elections were terrible, blah, blah, blah. They hadn't been able to send any monitors. Isn't this awful? It's terrible. And then within a month, they were all back doing deals with Museveni and, arranging military things. And I just, one of the reasons we're just so thrilled to be in Venice and be at these festivals is if the entertainment industry can support people like BOBI, they should support people like BOBI, and it's wonderful that journalists and people in entertainment and Venice and all these festivals are prepared to stand with what we know is right.
Sì, e ci auguriamo che questo magari possa accadere dopo Venezia, speriamo. Il nostro tempo è scaduto. Molte grazie per essere qui a Venezia con questo film. And good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.